a totality of effect of a number of change agencies operating in South Africa. I personally would like to see less groups. I'd like to see groups like ANC, PAC, and the Black Consciousness Movement deciding to form one liberation group. And it is only, I think, when black people are so dedicated and so united in their cause that we can effect the greatest results. And whether this is going to be through the form of conflict or not will be dictated by the future. I don't believe for a moment that we are going to willingly drop our belief in the non-violence stance as of now. But I can't predict what will happen in the future, in as much as I can predict what the enemy is going to do in the future.
Can you guess at all at the number of years the change might take?
That's a very difficult exercise. I don't want to get involved in that kind of exercise. Some people say 5 years, others say 10 years. I think we are not at a stage yet where it is possible to fix a precise timetable.
When you speak of an egalitarian society, do you mean a socialist one?
Yes, I think there is no running away from the fact now that in South Africa there is such an ill distribution of wealth that any form of political freedom which does not touch on the distribution of, proper distribution of wealth will be meaningless. The whites have locked up within a small minority of themselves the greater proportion of the country's wealth. And if we have a mere change of face of those in governing positions, what is likely to happen is that black people will continue to be poor, and you will get a few blacks filtering through into the so-called bourgeoisie, and our society will be run almost as of yesterday. So that for meaningful change to occur, there needs to be an attempt at reorganizing the whole economic pattern and economic policies within this particular country. PPC believes in a judicious blending of private enterprise, which is highly diminished, and state participation in industry and commerce, especially on industries like mining, gold, diamond, asbestos, and so on, like forestry, and of course complete ownership of land. Now, in that kind of judicious blending of the two systems, we hope to arrive at a more equitable distribution of wealth.
But you see a country, sorry, clearly you see a country in which black and white can live amicably on equal terms together.
That is correct. We see a completely non-racial society. We don't believe, for instance, in the so-called guarantees for minority rights, because guaranteeing minority rights implies the recognition of portions of the community on a race basis. We believe that in our country there shall be no minority, there shall be no majority, there shall just be people. And those people will have the same status before the law, and they will have the same political rights before the law. So in a sense, it will be a completely non-racial egalitarian society.
But will the vast number of blacks, after all their experiences, be able to live a life without giving vent to feelings of revenge, of...
yes, we believe it is the duty of the vanguard political movement which brings about change to educate people's outlooks. I mean, in the same way that blacks have never lived in a socialist economic system, they've got to learn to live in one. In the same way that they've always lived in a racially divided society, they've got to learn to live in a non-racial society. They've got many things to learn, and all this must be brought to them and explained to the people by the vanguard movement, which is leading the revolution. So that I've got no doubt in my mind that people, and I know people in terms of my own background where I stay, are not necessarily revengeful, nor are they sadistic in outlook. Now, the black man has got no ill intentions for the white man. The black man is only incensed at the white man to the extent that he wants to entrench himself in a position of power to exploit the black man. But beyond that, nothing more. And we don't need any artificial majorities, any artificial laws to entrench ourselves in power, because we believe once we come into power, our sheer numbers will maintain us there. So we do not have the same fear that the minority white government has been having all along. which has led to these many laws, designed to keep them there.
As you know, the main argument of the government is always that the black man just isn't on a civilizational level at present to pull his full weight politically.
Yeah.
And now, do you think of a one-man, one-vote franchise?
Yes, we do think so, entirely. Entirely one man, one vote, no qualification whatsoever, except the normal ones which you find throughout the world.
And you think that the black man, in fact, is perfectly well able?
The black man is well able, and the white man knows it. I mean, the irony of that kind of situation is that when the white government negotiates so-called independence for the so-called Transkei, they don't speak in terms of a qualified franchise. In the Transkei, every Transkeian votes, you see, and you get white nationalist politicians arguing that this is a system which is going to work for the Transkei. But somehow when it comes to the broader country, the blacks may not vote because they don't understand the sophisticated, economic patterns out here. They understand nothing. So they need to operate at a different sort of level. Now this is all nonsense. It is meant to entrench the white man in the position in which he finds himself today. We will do away with it altogether. There will be a completely non-racial franchise, and black and white will vote as individuals in our society.
Well, this is all fascinating. As an outsider visitor, I can only say that my feeling is that this is bound to be a very long and probably very bloody road.
There is that possibility. There is that possibility, but as I said earlier on, it will be dictated, purely by the response of the Nationalist Party. If they've been able to see that in Rhodesia, Smith must negotiate with the leaders of the black people in Rhodesia. Yes, I think conflict is unavoidable given the predictable response from the present system. And this conflict can be pretty generalized and extensive and protracted. My worst fears are that working on the present analysis, conflict can only be on a generalized basis between black and white. We don't have sufficient groups who can form coalition with blacks, that is, groups from the whites at the present moment. But the more such groups come up, the better to minimize that conflict.
Mr. Biko, thank you very much.